Welcome everyone to our January legislative update. My name is Tess Milner. I'm the Executive Director of the Lamoille Chamber of Commerce. We have with us today Jeff Lindemer of L2 Consulting and Training, and he's going to be our wonderful moderator today.
Welcome everybody. We're going to have a lot of people joining throughout the time, joining and leaving, I suspect. We have every one of our legislators but one right now, and we expect her to show up. The format of this meeting is to have each legislator share a few minutes of what's going on. Because this is the first meeting of the year, there's a lot going on, and there's certainly a lot of concerns by all the constituents. So we want to have an opportunity for questions and answers. I will tell you that Senator Westman has to leave at 9 o'clock. This meeting runs until 9:30 generally. And so without further ado, I will kick off with Senator Westman, please.
Well, good morning. So the early part of the session, we all get our committee assignments. So let me talk about where I landed on committees. My morning committee is natural resources. And whatever we thought our agenda was going to be in natural resources has now, in the early part of the session, changed. The governor put out an executive order which changes the structure of the district commissions and centralizes some of the power in that. We have 90 days to vote up or down on the governor's order, both the House and the Senate. And so that is that Act 250 structural change of how the district commissions relate to the State Environmental Board is going to be the focus of our committee, I would say, for at least the next 6 weeks. My afternoon committee remains appropriations, and with this week, with the governor's speech and the governor's presentation of his budget, we will in earnest probably get down to talking about next year's budget. We've been working, taking testimony on the budget adjustment to adjust for this fiscal year. And as you may have heard last week, the emergency board met, and the state economists through a consensus forecast had come up with some pretty significant increases in revenues from last August estimates. I guess, and I think what most people took away from that is the significant federal aid has put us in a much better position than we would have been without that aid, and has helped our state revenues. But I would warn people, we are still down from what the revenue estimates were a year ago at this time. And we will, it'll be very hard to put together a budget without more federal aid, and federal aid that's flexible. And particularly with the huge issues that are out there around in this county and around the state with the state college system. And now there is all the issues that are being raised around teachers' retirement, which I suspect that we'll get into as we go on with this. And that's probably enough. So whoever else you'd like to hand off to, I'm happy to.
Okay, thanks, Rich. In the order that I see people, that's how I'm going to go. Dan is the one right next to Rich, so I'll start with Dan.
Morning. Thank you for having me this morning. So, yeah, we also had committee assignments and to start in the House, and I'm back on Human Services where I've served for the last 2 terms. That committee basically is looking at Department of Human Services, but really Dale, DCF, and Department of Health are kind of the three main parts of state government that we look at the policy around. So we had them all into our committee to start off. We had the commissioner of each of those agencies, went over, where they are, what they're working on, kind of their priorities for the session, and also how they've been working around the COVID, all the work they're doing around making sure that people are safe around the epidemic that we're going through. So we started with that, and then we jumped into budget adjustment. The governor put out some kind of truing up of the budget, so we went through that. I had a portion of DCF that I was responsible for, so we met with the commissioner, put in a report to our committee chair, and so we'll see how that goes. That goes in a letter to the House Appropriations Committee, and they're the ones that make the decision on if that budget adjustment happens. So definitely been a lot of stuff going on, working on some legislation around the Office of the Child Advocate, some recovery housing, and a new senior nutrition program for older Vermonters, really looking at how Meals on Wheels and all the funding sources are working together to make sure people are not hungry. So I just see Nicole jumping on right here from our Lamoille Meals on Wheels, so perfect timing. That's what I've been up to, and looking forward to answering any questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dan, very much. Avram, you're next on the chart.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. I am, as I think most people know, I'm one of the two representatives from the Lamoille, Washington district, which in Lamoille County includes Morristown and Elmore, along with Dave Yacovone. I am starting my second term on the House Energy and Technology Committee. In the House, we each serve on one committee, not two. And that committee deals with on energy and climate change issues, regulated energy, the unregulated energy, as well as on the technology side, broadband and the state's information and technology systems and telecommunications, both wired and wireless. We have two other members of that committee on from Lamoille County, at least one of whom I see is Lucy Rogers and Heidi Scheuermann. So I'm not going to take too much time, other than to say that in the first part of this session, I expect we will be dealing primarily, not exclusively, but primarily with broadband issues, which is a very major issue in our area, particularly in the rural parts of the area. We did previously pass some emergency COVID measures, but that is not, most of those are not a permanent solution. And I think we will get to some energy issues in the second half of this year. I've introduced two, I'm going to say relatively small energy bills. One, which I introduced last year at the request of the Department of Public Service, which allows the smaller utilities, the municipal utilities and co-ops in the state, a bit more flexibility in their rate making so that they can engage in some more innovative carbon reduction programs. And the other is a bill that actually passed the Senate sometime in the summer that would extend the authority of the Rygate woodchip plant to continue, which is one of our few baseload renewable energy sources. It passed the Senate, but because of everything was so interrupted by COVID-19, the House never took it up. So those are two issues that I have put bills in about, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Avram, very much. Heidi.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Tess, for doing this. We appreciate it. As Avram said, I've been appointed to the Energy and Technology Committee. Again, this will be my second term, and right now we're really focused, and the priority of the chair and the vice chair is broadband. And not that one of the challenges is that the state doesn't have jurisdiction over broadband. We can't require last mile coverage by the providers, but we're trying to put into place a follow-up to our 2019 legislation that allowed for municipalities and regional entities, especially in addition to the incumbent providers, to expand and grow their service territories, and for municipalities and the regional organizations like CUDs, Lamoille FiberNet CUD, to see what they can do to fill the gaps, of which there are significant gaps in coverage. So we're trying to get things organized just in case we have some additional CARES money that comes in for it, and so that we're really prepared that we can get that money out into the places that need it and that can use it quickly and get it done. My other focus, or two other focuses, I'm the chair again of the tourism caucus, and so we've been meeting. We've had a couple of meetings now. We meet on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. We have a YouTube channel that people can watch our caucuses, so that they can see what's going on. But we have several things we're working on as a caucus. We came to realize even more so, although I think our community knows well how important the tourism and hospitality industry is to the state of Vermont. It became ever so more apparent during the pandemic. And so we've got a really good group of members of the caucus that represent the broad spectrum, represent communities throughout the state of Vermont, from every corner and from across the political spectrum. So we're happy about that, and we're moving forward on some various things, some funding changes or some modifications to get more investment in tourism marketing, in addition to some changes in alcohol laws, some agritourism. There's an agritourism bill that we're hoping to get through the legislature this time, and there is some desire by some. Obviously, the short-term rental market was something that we're looking at. There's some proposals out there. I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about that, though, as well. And then education, as always, is a priority of mine that I'm focused on. I have several pieces of legislation dealing with both Act 46 and some data, some legislation that will require data to be returned to the people so that we can really see how our local schools are doing, which we can't, which we don't have access to right now, unfortunately. So those are two of the issues with regard to education that I'm working on. And that's about it.
Thank you, Heidi. This is great. Everybody's keeping really short. We're going to have a lot of time for discussion. Dave, you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see everybody. I'm on the Appropriations Committee again. This would be my third term there. The state economists shared with us that Vermont has roughly a $35 billion economy. We've received or receiving roughly $7 billion in various federal assistance, from individual assistance to PPE, et cetera. Well, if you had a tub of water and it held 35 gallons and somebody dumped another 7 gallons of water into it, you'd have spillage, you'd have overflow. And that's what's happening throughout our economy, but not evenly in any stretch of imagination. And as those revenues move through our economy, auto sales are up significantly. They're surging. Sectors of the real estate market are very, very robust. Consumer spending is up, and sales tax revenue. Hospitality, on the other hand, as Heidi just stated very well, is suffering terribly. So there's winners and losers, but, and as Rich mentioned, there's additional revenues coming into the state. So we're trying to sort that out. The question will be, one of the questions, many questions, much of this revenue is one time. It might be a bridge to FY23, FY24. So we have to be careful on how we invest that money. The committees, the parts of state government that I've been assigned are aging and independent living, mental health, all of Medicaid, and the Green Mountain Care Board. So those are 4 large pieces that I'm working on to try to sort things out. In the meantime, we'll certainly be looking at pensions. We'll be looking at the state colleges. We look at all of state government and trying best how to sort that out. I've got 2 bills that I've introduced specifically as prime sponsor. One is for a long-term care trust fund, which is going to get, I'm told, 5 to 7 minutes this week in Dan Noyes' committee. we have to be succinct, and try to persuade them to take it up. And the other one the chair tells me he'll take up is the Vermont Economic Solutions Act, which I may talk about later if we get an opportunity. I don't want to go on too long, but it's great. It's great to be back. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much, Dave. Lucy?
Thanks. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Jeff, for facilitating. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lucy Rogers. I am the state representative for Cambridge and Waterville. And last session, I spoke a lot about my work on the healthcare committee. This session, I am the 3rd member of the Lamoille delegation on the Energy and Technology Committee. So I'm joining Avram and Heidi there. And as Avram and Heidi said, that's the committee that deals with broadband, energy planning, and IT and cybersecurity. So I've been involved over the past few years locally in Lamoille County on starting our Lamoille FiberNet Communication Union District, which I can speak a little bit more about. But I'm excited to be joining this committee with kind of a mix of on the ground experience and understanding, and then some aspects of the committee's jurisdiction that are totally new to me. So it feels like a good mix of ability to contribute and lots of new issues to learn about. I have a few other bills or topics that I'm also following along with Senator Westman. I'm following pretty closely developments with Act 250. And then as a member of the Rural Caucus, I've been trying to organize and push members of the Rural Caucus to reach out to their constituents who have been in touch with them about Act 250 and really organize drilling down. We know that the feedback we hear is the process is really lengthy, it's really unpredictable, it's really expensive. Maybe usually there's not so much feedback that the ultimate outcome is wrong, it's just the way you get there that's so difficult. And so pushing people to kind of drill down from it's too long or it's too expensive to specifically what could change about the process to make it better. And that's kind of the challenge the Rural Caucus is facing right now is translating vague feedback into specific policy suggestions going forward. So please be in touch with me if anyone here would like to talk further about that. And then I continue to remain kind of focused on the issues of the state colleges and funding for higher education more generally. And then the final issue that I've been following is the pupil weighting study, which is a little bit complicated or difficult to explain, but the basic gist is our state's education funding formula is based on per pupil spending per school district, but not every single pupil is weighted the same. For example, it's a different cost to educate an elementary school student versus a high school student. And the pupil weighting study essentially demonstrates that we've been inaccurately weighting the per pupil cost and underrepresenting the additional cost of educating low-income students, rural students, students who are not native English language speakers. And this is not only kind of a, we like to have our funding formulas based in actual evidence, but also it becomes quite a bit of an equity issue as it is the lower income, more rural, less white school districts that have been underfunded. So that is another issue I am following, and I will leave it there. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I'll reiterate one thing that Lucy said that's jumped out at me is that every one of our representatives is reachable by email easily. So you can find their contact information on the Vermont.gov website. And I encourage everyone to write to our legislators because they're active, interested, and willing to help. And last but not least is our new addition to Lamoille County Representatives, Kate Donnally.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late. I was privately chatting with Jeff, apologizing, saying that 8 a.m. is a wild time at my house with 2 young kids. So I am excited to be here, and I appreciate the invitation, and I intend to be here in the future. And it might not be the first time that I am a little bit late to start. So bear with me. I am excited to see some familiar faces and excited to meet some new folks. My name is Kate Donnally. I represent Lamoille 2 District alongside Dan Noyes. As many of you know, that's Belvedere, Johnson, Hyde Park, and Wolcott. I was recently assigned to the Judiciary Committee, which I was very excited about. It was my #1 choice. And I'm sort of in a unique position because of that. I'm sure this isn't always the case, but we're not quite as steeped in the financial aspects of things, which I know people are eager to talk about right now during the time of COVID. But it's an interesting position to be in, to be focusing on very different content than what a lot of folks are focusing on in their committees right now. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that specific committee and things that are running through that committee at this time. But I'll bounce over to some of the other things that I'm tracking as well. I appreciate the explanation that Lucy just gave of the weighting study. That's definitely something that's on my radar and I'm actively tracking. And I think Lucy did a nice job explaining it, so I'll spare you the description of that one. It's a little too bad that it's a mouthful to explain, because I think it's a bill that has the potential to really impact our community, and it'd be nice if we could just have a little catchphrase for it. But definitely something we'll keep talking about and looking at. Very interested in the Vermont Economic Solutions Act that Dave has been talking about, and eager to follow that and then its progress. Also, really interested in the work of Let's Grow Kids and the childcare advocacy that's happening in the state right now, and looking at supporting legislation that's coming through to look further at how to support our systems that support childcare in the state, affordable, accessible childcare, and also a BIPOC land use bill that's been put in. I'm curious to track that as well. There is a bill that I submitted. It's a pretty simple bill that is in response to, well, I can say simple bill. I think we'll probably learn that no bill is simple, but some of you might know some of the challenges that the Lamoille Community House experienced trying to transition to 24 hours a day operation during COVID. I'll explain a little bit more, but essentially, homeless shelters are often only permitted to be of use in the evenings and at night. It's very common that they're not permitted to be open during the day. And so that is the case with Lamoille Community House. And they were scheduled to open in November, which is right around when Governor Scott, again, sort of intensified the executive orders. And because of the permitting that they were under, they could not immediately and flexibly shift to a 24-hour operating schedule due to a variety of permitting issues. And so the bill that I have submitted is just in response to that, and it would allow municipalities to have the option of fast tracking or sort of bypassing their immediate permitting process related to homeless shelters during states of emergency specifically, so that people who are houseless can have immediate access to shelter and protect their safety and the safety of our communities. So that we'll see what comes of that. I think I'll stop there, and I'm excited to answer any questions and listen to everyone else and my colleagues answer their questions as well.
Thank you very much, Kate. And thank you very much, legislators. I'm pretty sure I've got everybody covered who started with us this morning, came with us this morning. I'm going to take a little bit of executive privilege and pipe in with my comment before we get to everybody's questions. And when we get to everybody's questions, you can request a question by raising your hand. You can raise your hand online. You can send a chat to Tess. And there are several ways to get yourself on the list. The one thing I want to say is that the company I work with has 100 beds for level 3 residential care. We manage the elderly. The 100 beds are spread among Bristol, Burlington, and Montpelier. In the first round of PPP, we qualified and received a PPP loan, which is now I think going to become a grant, for over $800,000. And in round 2, the rules disqualify us. They say we no longer qualify because we could not show a decline in revenues quarter to quarter of 25% or more. So we have been working our tails off to keep our residents healthy, and we have succeeded. We have kept COVID out of our residences, yet we don't qualify. So my question is, or my suggestion is, please understand that round 2, the first level of round 2, is not favorable to a lot of businesses because of that one restriction. There's another another program out there called ERTC, which is run through the IRS, which has to do with tax credits. And, and there's a restriction on that thing that says if you had a prior PPP loan, you don't qualify for the ERTC. Now, both of those can amount to substantial money. Both of those can help us to stay open and keep our people healthy, and we're restricted. So my comment, my question, my suggestion is, can somebody be aware of what's going on in the PPP program primarily that is disqualifying for a lot of businesses in Vermont? I'm finished. So anybody, Dan?
Just quickly, you're not the only person we've heard that from. So there are other businesses and residential care facilities that have brought this subject up as well. So I'm sure that we'll figure something out. It's not state government. It's federal.
No, I understand that.
Sorry, but I definitely heard it from other individuals
right.
that this is a concern, and that they changed it kind of halfway through. So,
Rich, did you have something?
It's exactly what I said to you when we began. The federal government has put restrictions, and even in the early round, we couldn't use any of that money within our own budgets. So when you speak to us, you are speaking to people that we're having to live with the federal restrictions. And what we really need is flexibility around the money that comes from the feds to be able to address the needs of our particular state.
Thank you.
If I may, Jeff, if I may just jump in, you may want to contact the Vermont Agency of Human Services to see if their healthcare stabilization fund can assist you in any way.
Unfortunately, David, that's another sore story. We applied to the healthcare stabilization. They wrote back and said you've received enough money and no longer qualify. So for the state, for the healthcare stabilization people to tell us we've received enough money is kind of hard to hear. That's number one. And I have actually written to the governor, and I think that we haven't been shut out completely, but we've been shut out temporarily. So I appreciate the recommendation. It hasn't worked yet.
I would go back to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing? And Jeff, I certainly, like Dan, I know, I understand, and I've heard the same thing from folks. Just to be clear, it is, the whole idea of the PPP and some of this federal funding is to make sure that and all of this federal funding that's coming in, is to make sure that those businesses who have lost significant amounts of revenue, and if you're not able to prove over 25, there are so many other ones that have lost 80% of their revenues coming in, or so that's and I understand your concern. It's just that there's only so much money to go around, and I think they're trying to get the biggest bang for the buck to make sure that these businesses stay in business and can keep their doors open. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think I understand the concern, and I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's with other businesses that have lost so much more. I think they're trying to make sure that those are the priorities. So.
All right, thanks. All right, we can move on to other questions. Kate, Tess, do you have some questions?
We do, yes. So the first question was asked by Deb Lindemer, and she's asking representatives, why will it take until spring for 65-year-old people to receive their first COVID-19 shot? Is it that we don't have enough vaccines, or is it how quickly we are able to offer the vaccines? It just seems like things are moving more slowly here in Vermont.
Lucy?
Sure, I can start off, and I'm sure someone will jump in afterwards. But I just think one piece that's important to understand, if you look at the rankings of vaccines administered per capita, Vermont is one of the top states for vaccines administered per capita, and we're pretty much administering the vaccines the minute we get them from the federal government. So I think one thing that's just, I know I've had a number of constituents who this has been really confusing for, and it absolutely is confusing. But Vermont just started opening up registration for individuals 75 and above. And I think it's confusing because there's other states right now that opened up for individuals 65 and above. So that gives the impression that Vermont is lagging behind other states. But whereas in reality, the per capita vaccines administered have been greater in Vermont, but other states have chosen to open up a larger age range at a time, which we expect has likeliness to cause a lot of chaos and mayhem. So Vermont, in order to administer vaccines as kind of effective and in as straightforward a way as possible, is choosing to keep smaller brackets in order to not have a huge backflow. I'm sure someone else will add, but I think it's important to realize that the fact that we're starting with a smaller age range is actually an intentional strategy to make vaccine administration go more smoothly. It's not a representation of having administered fewer vaccines.
Any other comments about that? Dan?
Yeah, just quickly, we have around 16,000 Vermonters over the age of 75. And if you were to take out the individuals that were vaccinated under 1A, which was nursing homes, residential care, it's considerably less. And I think the way they're just trying to break it down into smaller bites, we get about 8,000 vaccines a week in the state. So they're just going to be moving through this process and making sure that we don't see people lined up waiting outside in the winter trying to get a vaccine. They're just trying to do it orderly and in some sort of by appointment. There's actually a really good presentation by the Commissioner of Health on the that was to our committee that really talks about how he came to this conclusion on how to set up this based on number of people in each population and how the impact that COVID has on different age groups. So you can find that on the Human Services website, or you can call me and I'll be glad to send it. It's, he came to our committee and really broke it down quite well. He's also coming to the Older Vermonters Caucus, which is, we meet every Wednesday at noon. He's coming this week and he's gonna kind of give us an update on how the rollout has been happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, wonderful. Our next question is from Jessica Bickford. She says, Heidi mentioned potential changes to alcohol policy from the Travel and Tourism Coalition. Can you share more what that might look like? And it looks like Heidi has stepped away from her desk. Does anyone else have a response to that?
We can come back to it.
All right. The next question also from Jessica. Oh, here comes Heidi. All right, so I'll ask the second question again. Heidi, you mentioned potential changes to the alcohol policy from the Travel and Tourism Coalition. Can you share what that might look like?
Sure, I'm trying to remember exactly. So some of it is some permits of tasting permits, changes. I'll send I had it on my email newsletter. Who was asking? Because I want to send it to her.
Jessica Bickford.
Okay. So some is it on the permit section. Some is to make a different, there's a provision to make a different, right now with alcohol sales, restaurants and licensees have to purchase their alcohol at a liquor store, cash or with a cash or check, and it's at a retail amount price. It's at the regular retail price. There's a proposal in this bill that would change that to a wholesale price. Actually, not wholesale, because the state would lose too much money. They're going to do a licensee price, so it'll probably be something in between. There is, what else is there? I can't recall off the top of my head all of them. Matt Byrong is the lead. He owns a restaurant down in Virgins, and he's the lead on this and has been working with the newly formed restaurant coalition and also with the Department of Liquor and Lottery to move forward. Jessica, I'll send you the details of the proposal as it now stands. I don't think it's been introduced yet. They were still working on the language. So as soon as it's introduced, I'll also let folks know.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Jessica also had a question for Rich. S25 was proposed recently by Senator Benning related to changes to the cannabis regulations. How do you see it interacting with Act 164 relating to retail cannabis legislation that towns may be voting on during town meeting?
I have to be completely honest. I suspect his bill was introduced this past week, and I'm sure it went to the Judiciary Committee, and I actually have not read his bill yet, so I can get back to Jessica with comments later, but I haven't been able to read Joe's bill yet.
Can Kate add anything because she's on the Judiciary Committee?
No, because Kate would be on House Judiciary, and
okay.
And this would have gone to Senate Judiciary, and we are at this point having a slew of bills introduced all across both bodies now. We will get somewhere between 1,200 and 1,400 bills introduced during the set, and the mass group of them come in early in the session, and so and each of us concentrate on our committee areas and those individual issues that we're interested in, and it's hard to keep up.
All right, so that was the last question that was sent to me via the chat. Does anyone else have questions for representatives? All right, Michael Hartman.
You have to unmute. No, you're still muted.
How about now?
Got it.
Okay, thank you. So this may be for Kate, Dan, and Rich, but I think as you're aware, we've, through the COVID money, we were able to get a lot of people temporarily housed at 3 motels in the county. And this is now added up to over 100 adults and children who are in this housing. And I know that we just, through the recent federal bill, we got some more money to continue this for a while. But one of the challenges to it, I've been working with Will Eberly, the field services from AHS, and Capstone and Lamoille County Mental Health. We've all been doing a lot of work with the shelter folks to try to create some good programming, since we have all of these folks living in kind of these three central places. One of the challenges to this is we're doing a lot of collaborative work, but one of the pieces to it is where this is going to go. And we haven't really, I know this is all federal money, and I know that you all, as Rich said earlier, you don't have a lot that you can do with that. But in terms of trying to create some policies and some flexibility as we go out this year, of trying to see if we can take advantage of the fact that we're doing a lot of really positive health and mental health and substance use work with these folks. And we've gotten people flu shots. We've gotten a lot of things to happen that I think have improved their health and well-being. And it would be a shame, after having this year almost now of doing this, to just have things go back to where they were and kind of scatter everybody out and have these same challenges all over again. We kind of got a foot up on them this year. And I'm just wondering what thinking is going on in the legislature around how to build on this as an inadvertent success.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry, was someone else going to go?
I'm happy to start.
Go for it.
Go ahead, Rich.
So basically in this second federal bill, they put about $200 million in for housing. It has different requirements than what we did in the first rounds of money that we handed out for rental assistance and for the general housing, particularly the motel type program. The problem for us is going to be with that 200 million in the particular population in across the board is, and this may create more homeless people, is that there are some pretty strict restrictions, everything from income restrictions to other restrictions that they put on the money. 80% of the median you can't be over comes to mind as one. So we're having to sort through just exactly what all of the stipulations that the feds have added now to that 200 million, how we can use that money, how we might be able to put some of that money into the budget to relieve pressures in one area so we can use other money in other areas. So that question of what we can do with that 200 million is going to be out there. What I will say to you is, and this is not the population that you specifically talked about, but the rental assistance program that we had in place, that we had originally put 25 million of the first round in, that was to carry through the end of December, ran out of money in December, and there was not enough money to help them. The Senate pushed a bill through quickly that had some food assistance money in, and we put $2.8 million to help renters that are in arrears get through to the end of December. So to push that along. So there's a fast track small bill to help us get through with the expenses to the end of December that is heading towards the House now. And we're scrambling to figure out what we can do with that 200 million given the restrictions.
Any other comments about that? Dan?
So in the budget adjustment, there was money for housing, and we had a lengthy conversation on Friday in our committee about it. And I brought up the point, you know, there's definitely money is definitely an issue, but it's the housing stock. You know, we don't have the ability, we don't have the stock and a place for people to go and live. And, you know, we should be really looking at that. And on Wednesday, the Human Services Committee is going to be talking about homelessness and housing and this whole topic. So you can watch our committee online if you want. I'd be glad to send you the link. It's right on the legislative webpage. It's all broadcast on YouTube. And that's going to be our topic for Wednesday is homelessness and housing and all of the issues that you brought up. So thank you.
So I just say the rental assistance money that was in the budget adjustment, the Senate took it out. We separated out what we considered not controversial. And one of the things we considered not controversial was the 2.8 for rental assistance that we moved ahead on the fast track and sent to the House already, separate from the budget adjustment to try to move that along, to try to divert any attempt to put landlords and tenants in a bad place because they're so far behind, they're falling too far behind.
And we also had an update from the Joint Fiscal Office that the next round that just came through had a considerable amount of money for housing in it as well. But I'm not sure that they've even figured out exactly how that can be spent. So I'll just put that out there. It seems like that was the last batch that came in either late December or early January. So
that's the
jump in real quick if that's all right. So Michael, I'm not sure that I have an exact answer to your question. You know, I know Rich and Dan are talking specifically about funding for housing, but I think one of the things that comes to mind for me in hearing your question is, one, the extent to which local providers have come together, which has been pretty incredible. And, you know, I think, you know, I know as a social worker that that's really where the best work happens, is when agencies and different forms of support are able to collaborate with one another. And historically, the primary reason that is not possible is because of funding silos. And the fact that the services that we need to be able to work together for the benefit of the most vulnerable people in our community are competing for different funding streams. And so what I hear in your question is, you know, is there a way, is there a path forward? And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm sort of hearing is like, is there a path forward that could allow this kind of collaborative work to continue moving forward? Because we've set this foundation to some degree and we'd like to see it continue. Is that part of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would say so, Kate. I think the money has allowed us to do some things in unison that has really allowed us to use a minimal amount of resources really well. And we've all been able to contribute to this. So having a plan about how we would do that post CRF funds would be really useful.
That's exactly what the 200 million is designed, but it has strings.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just say that I would just be interested, sorry to interrupt, but
okay, go ahead.
Outside of this, I would be interested in continuing a conversation about what it's looked like for the agencies locally and how specifically we could think about more sustainable funding moving forward.
All right, I believe John Mandeville, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's a question and a comment. As long as we're talking about housing, I'd like to tie in housing with the whole issue of Act 250 and other regulatory issues. There really are two different kinds of housing, in my mind, that we need to be looking at. One is affordable housing, which is housing which is affordable to low-income people and is generally subsidized. But then there's workforce housing. And to me, workforce housing is equally as important, if not more important, than what we typically refer to as low-income housing. Part of the reason why there is so little housing stock available, as Dan Noyes said earlier, is developers cannot afford to build it and then sell it at a price that people can buy. That's not just Act 250, but it is partially caused by Act 250 and other regulatory issues that developers have to contend with. If you take a look right now in Lamoille County, and if you go to Zillow or you go to realtor.com, you will find that there is essentially almost nothing on the market. In Morristown itself, I know for a fact there are 2 houses on the market right now. What does that do? What it means is it's very hard for somebody to find something, but it also drives the prices up astronomically. So my issue is, and one of my point is, that something needs to be done to do everything possible to make the actual development and building of housing, whether it's a multifamily or single family dwelling, affordable to people that are working full-time jobs, who are making reasonable salaries. They still can't find a place to live.
Okay, Lucy.
Thanks, John. I appreciate those comments. And as someone who recently has gone through the months-long process of looking for simply rental housing for myself, I feel this very, very, very firsthand. So it's kind of, no matter where you're at in looking for housing, it's hard right now. And I think, I guess I'll say a little bit about a couple thoughts on Act 250, but before I go there, I want to kind of point out that there's more going on than simply difficulty of development. We have a state right now with a shrinking population and a housing crisis. And I think sometimes we need to step back and say clearly something is going on here, because why would we be having a housing crisis if we have a shrinking population? That doesn't actually make intuitive sense. And so I think one thing that's going on clearly gets to your point as well, John, which is difficulty of going through the renovation process to upgrade old housing stock. But in talking with the Lamoille Housing Partnership, just to try to understand some of these dynamics, it seems that really the short-term rental market is pretty significantly affecting housing. And I think we need to kind of start by at least acknowledging that, because there's more going on here than just an inability to build new housing. That being said, one piece that I've been working on with Act 250 is advocating for exempting downtowns and village centers from development in downtowns and village centers from Act 250, where the downtown or village center already has local zoning. And I think that's important, because if the local community has already gone through the process of making zoning decisions, to then kind of add Act 250 on top of it, what we're hearing is that can be a pretty big limitation for people in feeling like it's worth it to go through that process.
If I may, I'll just add, as somebody who has a great deal of experience in this particular issue, both with regard to low-income housing and regular market rent housing. I will say, and I'll reiterate the concerns about workforce housing. It is, and it is very costly for landlords to actually run these market rent housing, whether it's taxes or utilities, which are exceptionally expensive. All of the rules that are in place, I've got to go in and do all the changes to my smoke and CO detectors now, wiring, all of these things, which is fine. I understand the safety, but the more pressure you put on private developers and landlords, the more, and Lamoille Housing Partnership and me, in the sense of my low-income housing, there's rental money coming in, but it is very costly, and it becomes more so. So I understand why people are moving to short-term rentals. There's more money in it, and it's easier to maintain, and it's you get one bad tenant and it could cost you an entire year. So throwing money at the issue is not it. It's actually, really not necessarily it. It's also, understanding the pressures that are put on private developers and on current landlords with regard to it. And I don't get involved in these issues in the House just because of my conflict, but I can certainly share the experiences, and that is the reason why rents are as high as they are. So it's pretty simple, economics 101.
John, before you go, let me just say, Rich Westman, Senator Westman's going to be leaving us in a few minutes because he's got another commitment. I want to say thank you to Senator Westman. I want to invite him back, and I really appreciate the input from everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. It's a great way to get feedback from the community, and it has a long history, and I love it. So
good. Thank you very much. Sorry, John.
It's okay, no problem. See you, Rich.
Thank you.
I got 2 minutes and then I'm leaving.
Okay. Just a little piece of information that I think is worth knowing. According to the bankers I talked to, some of the developers I've spoken with, right now, the regulatory cost of building new construction, whether it's residential or commercial, by the time you add in the cost of delays, the cost of money, the cost of construction going up, legal costs, permitting costs, altogether, it can run as much as 30% of the total cost of the project itself. If you consider that out, that's a hell of a lot of money. And who pays for that? It's whoever is moving into or buying that property that's paying for it. It's not the developer. They may pay for it up front, but it ultimately goes to the consumer.
So can I make a comment before I jump off? And this is to you specifically, John. We're going to be taking testimony on the governor's executive order, and his executive order reorganizes the environmental board, the district commissions, and all. And what I'm afraid is that discussion around reorganization is going to take away from all of the issues that are important about downtown development, housing. I would add into that transportation. For me, for us to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on an existing highway to get that re-permitted needs to be looked at also. So when you get asked, and your colleagues in economic development get asked to come in and testify in front of the Senate Natural Resources and the House Natural Resources Committee, make your comments quickly about the restructuring, but focus on what the real issues are, the housing issues, the downtown issues, and for me, the transportation issues, but focus on those and don't get bogged down in what the structures are.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Do you want to go on to the next question, Tess, or?
Yes, please. So the next person in line to ask a question is Allison Link.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I wanted to bring to attention that there's some concerning data on tobacco use that was released in a report to the legislature last week on state revenues, specifically pages 23 and 24 of the January 2021 Economic Review and Revenue Forecast. So basically, what it says is that the taxable sales of cigarettes, tobacco products, and vaping have surged during the pandemic. And the specific data of that is that vaping has been particularly strong, bringing in nearly as much income in the first 6 months of fiscal year 21 as it did in its initial 11 months of taxation in fiscal year 20. All this we know is the tax sources add more than $8 million to the healthcare portion of the general fund in 2021. And, due to the addictive nature of the products, we know that that may continue. So just wanting to stress that well-funded tobacco control programs, the data shows that they're effective at reducing tobacco use, and in general that funding substance prevention, treatment, recovery, could need to maintain a priority focus. And specifically, there are a few bills that have already been introduced on tobacco, just to put it out there. There's S24, that's the tobacco flavor legislation, and that is menthol and other flavors, menthol considered a flavor. S41, eliminating purchase, use, and possession penalties on tobacco, that really looks at the equity for our youth. And H105, which is increasing tobacco tax by $1. And I didn't know if anyone, I know there's so many bills introduced, but I didn't know if anyone had any comments on any of that. And that's what I have to share. And I'd love to hear, I know that some folks do work specifically on, have been allies in tobacco program support.
Jeff, I'll just, I am not aware of the specific bills. They're not obviously in my committee or anything, but I'm sure obviously there's, obviously Healthy Lamoille Valley, first of all, is always in contact with us, and that's good. That helps us keep track of things. So continue that. And there's other lobbying organizations, there's other advocates in this State House, in Zoom and what have you, that will keep us posted as things progress, if they progress in any of the committees. But definitely you guys are very vocal and we appreciate that. So continue that as you hear things moving.
Dan?
I think the flavored tobacco one has also been introduced in the House, but not just the Senate. So I'm sure we'll hear something from it in my committee. I'm looking forward to taking some testimony on it. I know I actually got a text last year, I think from Jessica. Someone had put a sign up and it said, if you don't like the fact that that the age went to 21 for vaping products, call Dan Noyes. And I was like, great, call me. I voted for that.
I should also mention that February 11th, some of you may remember in the past had been the Our Voices Exposed Against Tobacco, Our Youth State House Rally. And so obviously that's not in person this year, but February 11th, there is an event and I can get you all the information to attend. We do have some local youth who are involved also in our middle school group, the Vermont Kids Against Tobacco.
All right, moving on to the next question from Dave McAllister. Is there any plan to address the gaps in the system of care to respond to youth in crisis? With the closure of Woodside and staffing shortages across the state, there are very few beds available to youth in crisis. Anyone have a response to that? Dan?
Thanks for that question. We actually have started talking about that in my committee. In the budget adjustment, there was an additional, I think 600,000 put into the beds that are at Washington County Mental Health, Turtle Rock, and I guess those are being moved into more permanent for the department. Basically what's happening is they closed Woodside, which is for justice involved youth. It's was a detention facility, and the reason that closed was, well, there's a number of reasons, but they've actually subcontracted now with a company called Beckett that's going to be opening a facility in Newark, not Newark, sorry. It's over by Wells River. Anyway, somewhere over there. So yes, definitely getting some attention in my committee. I'm also working on the Office of the Child Advocate, which is having somebody outside of DCF really looking at the systemic issues around how we provide services to youth who are in state custody and how we make sure they transition to adulthood, and really looking at not only policy, but kind of the bigger picture of what can we do to be a lot more successful and more cost effective. So yeah, that's definitely something that's going to be coming up in my committee quite a bit. And we know it's an issue that we need more beds and we need to make sure we have those services. So thanks for the question.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comments?
I'll just say quickly, Dave, that this is an area that I'm really passionate about as well. And so please reach out anytime. I'd love to work collaboratively on figuring out solutions to this. And also just to name that one of the areas that I have sort of latched onto and I'm hoping to get some support within the Judiciary Committee around, and hopefully Human Services as well, is looking at the current CHINS process, both within the court system and within the Agency of Human Services. And just thinking about this, you know, this doesn't directly answer your question, but thinking about this more holistically in general in terms of how do we work with the most at-risk youth in our state, and are our current systems working well? And if we can also look at making some reforms at various stages of the process, you know, ideally it also reduces the number of young people that might need to access those kinds of services. So just putting that out there, if anyone has any information they want to share with me about their experience in working with youth who are accessing those systems, please reach out to me, because it's an area that I'm working on right now. So thanks for the question, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm meeting with the mental health commissioner. I think it's next Monday morning to go over this topic and others. But I wanted to remind folks, there's a public hearing today on the BAA. I think it's all booked with people testifying. The BAA is not really controversial. However, what I wanted to encourage people to do, there'll be another public hearing in February on these kinds of issues, where you'll have an opportunity, probably have like 3 minutes, to say, here's an important issue, it's not being addressed appropriately. That's really critical, because we really listen to that, and it can be impactful. All of this, you know, whether it's we need more beds, we need more wages for caregivers, we need more, et cetera, it all competes with a very limited pot of dollars. And you tell us which is most important. It's really hard. So anyways, I encourage people, keep an eye on that, and I can let Tess know, and she can publicize it maybe with her means, her newsletter that'll be coming up soon. Thank you.
And the BAA is the Budget Adjustment Act, for sometimes we get in State House acronyms.
Thanks, Lucy.
All right, and that was the last question that was sent to me. Does anyone
Okay.
have another?
Are there any ad hoc questions out there? Wow.
Well, this is good.
Yeah. Start the week, start Monday morning with a meeting that ends on time. Early. You can't get much better than that. Dan.
I just wanted to, you see me looking away. My parents are trying to register for the vaccination, and if you anybody out listening can help their neighbor kind of register for this, they're struggling. And yes, so I'm sure that there's other individuals out in the community that are trying to register that are having problems. So reach out to any of your friends and colleagues that are trying to do this. The stress level is probably up here right now. I know it is with my dad. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So that's where I'm going next. Try to figure that one out before my next meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comments? All right. I do want to thank all of our legislators, our senator and our representatives, for this opportunity to come together and discuss things. I think these things are extremely effective. And so please tell your friends, anybody in Lamoille, anybody who wants to join us, Tess has the schedule. We're here. What's the next date?
The next date, hold on just a moment.
All right. It's somewhere around February.
It's February 22nd, Monday, February 22nd at 8 a.m. again. And all the information is on our website, www.lamoillechamber.com, or anyone can feel free to email me too. My email address is executivedirector@lamoillechamber.com.
And thank you, Tess. You put a lot of work together, to do this and bring this on, and it worked very successfully. So thank you to Tess. Thank you to our legislators, and certainly thank you to all our participants. And we'll end it with that.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you.
Yep.